At my husband's funeral, my son thanked another woman, and I was left with nothing. This is how I fought back. The chapel smelled of damp wool and lilies, the kind that wilt too fast under fluorescent lights. Rain pattered against the stained glass windows like impatient fingers, blurring the world outside into a watercolor of grays. I sat in the third row, my charcoal gray coat, Robert's favorite, clinging to my shoulders like a shroud. 40 years of marriage had etched lines into my face, but that morning I'd smoothed them with powder and a smile, determined to send him off with dignity. Robert always prized appearances. Even in death, I played the part of the grieving widow. Daniel stood at the podium, his sharp suit cutting a silhouette against the oak paneling. At 33, he was the spitting image of his father, tall, composed, with eyes that held secrets like locked drawers. His voice, steady as a metronome, recited the eulogy I'd helped him polish the night before. Dad was a pillar, he said, a man who built empires from blueprints and dreams. I nodded along, my hands folded in my lap, knuckles white against the black leather of my handbag. Pride swelled in my chest. My boy, all grown. Then he paused, his gaze drifting to the front row. "And there's someone I want to thank," Daniel continued, his tone softening like velvet over steel. "Someone who was truly family to us, who supported Dad through his darkest hours." The room hushed, a collective breath held. I leaned forward, heart quickening. Me, I thought. After all these years, the nights I sat by his bedside during his ulcer scares, the budgets I balanced when his firm teetered on bankruptcy, the dreams I shelved to raise our son. Surely this was my moment, the quiet acknowledgement I'd earned in silence. He said, "Miss Linda McAllister." The words landed like a slap, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Heads turned, murmurs rippling through the pews like wind through dry leaves. In the front row, she rose, a vision in emerald wool and heels that clicked like accusations. Linda, with her flawless bob and mascara that held back tears like a dam, dabbed her eyes with a silken handkerchief. She nodded graciously as if accepting an Oscar for Best Supporting Lover. Daniel's eyes met hers, warm and unwavering, and she sank back into her seat amid sympathetic whispers. "She's like family," someone breathed behind me, "sitting right up front. Poor thing." I felt the air thicken, my lungs seizing. Linda Mallister, Robert's competent assistant, the one he'd promoted to partner, the name he'd brushed off with a laugh whenever I asked. At the company Christmas party last year, she'd handed me a glass of Chardonnay with a smile sharp as cut glass. "You're so lucky," she'd said, her eyes lingering on Robert across the room. I'd dismissed it as office flirtation, the kind that fizzles under fluorescent lights. But now it burned. The service blurred after that, hymns droning like distant thunder, condolences offered like condolences to a stranger. I stood at the receiving line, murmuring thank you on autopilot, my smile a brittle mask. Daniel whispered to her as they embraced by the casket, "You're the one who's truly family." The teacup in my hand trembled, porcelain clinking against china like shattering illusions. I slipped out early, the rain soaking my coat as I drove home to an empty house that suddenly felt like a stage set for someone else's play. That night, the silence was a living thing, coiling around me as I peeled off the wrinkled satin ribbon from my coat. Robert's chair at the dining table loomed like a sentinel, its armrest cold where his hand once rested. I poured a glass of water, his beer bottles still lined the fridge, bitter and untouched, and flipped through old photo albums by lamplight. There we were, young and unscarred, me in a sundress at our wedding, him grinning with that boyish charm that had hooked me, and here my employee ID from his firm, where I'd been a rising financial consultant, second from the right in boardroom shots. "Quit," he'd said early on, his voice honeyed.
I'll take care of you. We'll build a family. I believed it was love, not a leash. Sleep evaded me, chased away by the tick of the kitchen clock. By dawn, resolve hardened in my veins like frost. Robert's death wasn't the end, it was the prologue to my unraveling. The lawyer's office reeked of ink and aged paper, sunlight slanting through blinds like prison bars. Mr. Hargrove, a man with a voice like grinding gravel, cleared his throat. Pursuant to the will, signed 3 years ago, the words washed over me. The Somerset house, the Nantucket cottage, the nest egg I'd scrimped to build, all to Linda Mallister. Not a dime for me, his wife of 40 decades. Daniel sat stone-faced beside her, fingers interlaced as if in prayer. No shock in his eyes, just serenity. Betrayal's quiet twin.
You knew, I whispered as we filed out, my voice a threadbare rasp. He met my gaze, unflinching. Dad had his reasons, Mom. Linda was there for him, the real him. You didn't understand. The drive home was a haze, rain lashing the windshield like accusations. Didn't understand? I'd understood plenty. The symphonies he attended alone, the business trips that smelled of her perfume on his collar. I'd managed our life's ledger, clipping coupons, selling my mother's emerald ring for Daniel's tuition, while he wove a separate tapestry. In the basement, amid dust-shrouded boxes, I unearthed the truth. Photos of Robert and Linda at galas, his hand on her waist. A Nantucket deed in her name, dated during my arthritis flare-up 6 years prior. And scrawled on one faded snapshot, "Our little family, one day official." Daniel, 19 and beaming, cropped into the frame like a co-conspirator. Rage bloomed, hot and unfamiliar, chasing the numbness. I crossed the street to Giselle's rose-choked garden, her widow's wisdom a balm. Linda? Oh, honey, they were thick as thieves for years. Symphonies, Christmas lights, even when you were nursing your sister. 15 years. A lifetime of my vigilance, blind to the shadows. Enough. I called Ruth Lanier, my old colleague from the firm, her voice crackling with the same fire that had forged our friendship. Maggie, spill it. Over lemon tea in her bungalow, I laid it bare. Suspicions of embezzlement, company funds funneled to Linda's consulting gigs. Ruth's eyes narrowed behind bifocals. This isn't just divorce fodder, it's fraud. She dove in, unearthing shell companies and staggered transfers, $350,000 over 5 years, timed like clockwork to evade audits. One payment synced with my surgery recovery, another the week I'd balanced his books through tears. Armed with screenshots and Ruth's annotations, I marched to Michelle Robinson's downtown firm, the Chicago skyline mocking my resolve from her glass tower. Michelle, sharp-suited and no-nonsense, flipped through my folder like a prosecutor eyeing a slam dunk. We'll bury her, but Daniel, he's the wild card. He was. Our cafe showdown unfolded under the scent of caramel lattes, the booth where I'd once bribed toddler tantrums with desserts. Daniel arrived, trench-coated, phone face down like a guillotine. Why sue Linda? Dad shows her. You're just making it ugly. Ugly? My laugh was hollow, echoing the boy I'd rocked through asthma nights. I gave everything, career, friends, that ring, for us, and he repaid me with lies. I slid the beach photo across, 2-year-old Daniel, red trunks and wobbly footprints, clinging to me against the waves. You knew safety then. Do you still? His jaw tightened. Dad said you were too strong, always questioning, criticizing. Linda made him feel needed, not smothered. Too strong. The verdict of a lifetime. I stood, rain drumming the windows like applause. Then I'll save that strength for me. His words trailed me into the lot. Mom, wait. But I drove into the storm, the wipers slashing tears I wouldn't shed. The lawsuit ignited like dry tinder. Headlines screamed, "Widow alleges embezzlement in heirloom betrayal." Linda's camp spun invoices,
flimsy forgeries Michelle shredded in depositions. Ruth's evidence painted a damning portrait. Funds siphoned for villas and vacations, a parallel life bankrolled on my sacrifices. I pored over Linda's Facebook like a detective, her curated bliss, lemon pies for Robert, bonsai gardens, toasts with Daniel, a knife twisting deeper. She wasn't a fling, she was an architect, positioning herself as the rightful heir. Court days blurred into a gauntlet. Daniel testified for her, voice cracking. Mom's rewriting history. Dad was happy. The gallery gasped and my heart fractured anew. But on the stand, I unraveled it all. The ledgers I'd once guarded, the silences I'd filled with soup and smiles. I built the foundation, I said, eyes locking on the judge, a silver-haired woman whose nod held the weight of shared wars. He just decorated it for someone else. The gavel fell like thunder. Fraud proven, Linda ordered to repay $1.2 million with interest. Properties sold, her emerald world auctioned to dust. She vanished. Jobless, reputation in tatters, her triumphant smile a ghost. The firm settled quietly, a hush-money bandage on Robert's legacy. Daniel's silence stretched years, a chasm wider than oceans. Then my father's funeral bridged it. He appeared at the graveside, trench coat sodden, eyes hollow. I was wrong, he choked, arms enveloping me. Defending a ghost, you were the real family. We wept under the oaks, mending threads frayed by illusion. When did you get so fierce? He asked later over coffee. I smiled, tracing the photo in my wallet. Always was, son. You just weren't looking. That spring, the crabapple tree in our garden, nearly felled last year, erupted in defiant pink. I hosted a small gathering there, folding chairs under its shade, laughter chasing the wind chimes tinkle. Women from the old firm raised glasses. To Maggie, the unbreakable. Daniel lingered, arm around a new girlfriend, his grin tentative but true. As dusk painted the sky in fire, I slipped into the house barefoot, heels dangling from one hand. The mirror caught me, not the invisible widow, but a woman etched with battles won. Robert's chair? I'd moved it to the attic, its armrest warmed by memory alone. In the quiet, jazz hummed from the radio, unhurried and mine. I poured wine, not his bitter brew, but a red bold as blood, and danced alone in the kitchen, steps sinking to a rhythm I'd finally claimed. At 62, I wasn't erased. I was rewritten, fiercer, freer, the author of my second act. The funeral hadn't buried me. It exhumed the fighter I'd always been. And in that rebirth, I found not just justice, but joy. Sharp, unyielding, and utterly my own.